Yo, what is up, Facebook? I'm back in the house, baby. It's Man Up Friday with Mike, your mentor. Hope you guys are doing well. We've got a lot of good content for you tonight, so I'm going to skip the introduction. If you don't know who I am, greetings. I usually give an introduction, but I want to get rolling on this since it's a little bit later in the night, and we've got a lot of good stuff to cover. I would say that this might be the most important Man Up Friday of the year. So I would encourage you to pull out your phone, notepad, something to take notes on, right? Because with this information tonight, you can literally change the course of your family tree. And that's no exaggeration, because that's what I'm doing in my family, and I'll explain that a little bit more here in a minute. So I want to give credit where credit is due. All of this information comes from The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Dr. Robert M. Lewis. I've talked about this numerous times. This changed my life at a very pivotal time in my life, and I'll be forever grateful for that. So the least I can do is share the information that I learned from going through this with other men, so that you can hear this stuff for yourself and decide, am I satisfied with where my life is at, with the person that I am, with the kind of husband that I am, the kind of father that I am, the kind of friend that I am, the kind of leader or person in the community I am, or do I want to answer the higher calling that I have on my life in all four of those positions that God has bestowed on me? More specifically, what we're going to talk about tonight, you can find, if you want to do further reading, in this book called Raising a Modern Day Knight, A Father's Role in Guiding His Son to Authentic Manhood, by Robert Lewis. So he goes into a lot of detail about the ceremonies we're going to talk about. And then, finally, this is all about our kids and leaving a legacy and changing the course of our family tree. And this was a little picture from a little event we had up north a few years ago with my son and his friend Ethan. And we let Ethan's little brother Levi, who's not so little anymore, tag along, and just helped set the future and set the pace for these young men. And let's get this out of the way. Only men can bestow manhood on other men. I know there's a lot of single moms that watch this, and you want to do right by your sons, right? So you're looking for role models, you're looking for men to play a part in your man's life or in your son's life, and good for you, because only manhood can be bestowed from one man to another, just like only womanhood can be bestowed from one woman onto another. So we're going to jump into this. Let me share my screen here, and we'll get started. Alright, Fathers and Sons Part 3. And this is extremely important. I've shown this picture before. I gotta move something, sorry. This is my son. Officially or technically, he is my stepson. And he came into my life when he was 7. But the point of all this is, right, I've shared many times that my father was in and out of my life, and the impact that had on me and the wounds that left me with. My son has really never known his father, and I don't find it coincidence that God is using everything that I've been through to make a difference in my son's life. So here we are, not only changing my family tree, but technically we're changing his family tree as well, through the stuff that we're doing, and through this these things that I've learned, that I've implemented into our lives. So let's go into a quick review, since it's been a little while. So the power of dad, there's 3 types of parenting. One, absent parenting, right, where we may not be there physically, like my dad wasn't, but maybe you grew up in a home where your dad wasn't there emotionally or wasn't there socially. And then you have engaged parenting, where you take a more active role in your kids' lives, and you just kind of go with the flow. And then there's strategic parenting, where you're thinking about what's coming next and how you can best prepare your kids for that, right? It equips them with the most important ways of life. It anticipates what they will need for each phase of life, whether they're a toddler, an adolescent, in their teenage years, young adult, or marriage. And then dad is destiny. Dad is and always will be a powerful figure in a son's life. And not just in a son's life, but in a daughter's life as well. And in both of those roles, we are supposed to be, in a perfect world, modeling the relationship that God wants to have with us to our kids. So Proverbs 17:6 says the glory of sons is their fathers. And that's true. Tell me a little boy who doesn't want to be like his dad. A little boy whose biggest hero isn't his dad. A little boy who doesn't think his dad can't do anything. I mean, I worked in a boys' home for a couple of years, for like a year and a half maybe. And, these boys had terrible things done to them by their parents or by people in their community. And despite what happened, their need and their desire to want to have a relationship with their parents, was incredibly strong. It was so visceral. It didn't matter what their parents had done to them, and I'm talking about horrific stuff. These boys wanted to have a relationship with them, and that just goes to show the depth and the strength of the bond that is placed in us from birth between us and our birth parents. So we talked about the 3 ingredients of strategic fatherhood: the dig, dad's compelling character, right? We're showing our sons the way to live life. Every son wants to be like their dad. So what are you modeling for your son, right? How are you living out your life? In what ways are you demonstrating things that matter to you, like courage, honor, responsibility, respect? Secondly, the set, right? Dad's clear instructions. What instructions are you giving to your son as they grow up, right? From how to work a grill and cook a burger and grill a steak, to how to make scrambled eggs, to how to change a tire, change the oil, to how to set a budget and live below your means and save and open a checking account and go through an interview. All these things, right? What are you strategically thinking about that your son needs in the next phase of his life that you can help prepare him for and you can teach him? Right? This basic question: what essential information do I want him to leave home with? And then the spike, and this is where we bring it all together, and this is Dad's creative ceremonies. How do we bring a close to one chapter in our sons' lives and introduce them into the next chapter that is not only remarkable but rememberable for our sons for the rest of their life, and serves as a cornerstone, if you will, or a marker in their life that they can look back on and be like, wow, my dad loved me enough to do that for me, to set the tone and to cast vision for the next section of my life. Extremely powerful. So we talked about the power of ceremonies, and that memorable ceremonies are costly, right? This isn't cheap. Order, some pizza and pop some popcorn and watch a movie type of thing. This is something that takes planning, right? Sometimes weeks of planning, and it means you might have to save some money up, right? And spend a small fortune to make this ceremony special for your son. but the ROI that you get from this can never be measured. Never. It's incredible. And so I would encourage you, once again, don't skip on that part. And then memorable ceremonies ascribe value to the person being celebrated, right? You're bringing value and showing value to your son. And I'm not saying, money is not everything. But one way of ascribing value to someone or something and letting that thing, or the way that that thing represents its worth, is what you're willing to pay for it, or what you're willing to spend, I guess, on it. So memorable ceremonies employ symbols. We're going to look at some of those here in the ceremonies, and you want it to be age appropriate, but also one that they will look at and they will remember. I got a sword on my wall from a ceremony that I was a part of, and I'll never forget that. Never. And I will always remember what that symbolizes and what that means. And I look at it often to remind me of that. Memorable ceremonies involve others who are significant to those being celebrated. Who can you involve in these ceremonies that has made or is making a difference in your son's life? Excuse me. When I did the first ceremony for my son, it was important for me to have not only people that made a difference in his life, or that had made a difference in his life, but men I respected that could come around and speak to him about what it meant to be a man, and encourage him in that, and cast vision, right, which is simply a fancy word for calling things out of him, and almost calling, how do I explain this simply, projecting into the future, right, the possibility that he is capable of stepping into, right, calling those things out of him, encouraging him, and then I asked them to think about what they could go back and they could tell themselves at that age, and to share that. And then finally, memorable ceremonies empower a life with vision. Talked about that a little bit. Just calling forth those gifts in your son, and speaking life into your son, and what his life could look like should he continue to make the right decisions and to pursue these honorable things. So, and then quick reminder, men are not born, they are made. I think I'm going to get that framed and put that up here in my office. But yeah, super important thing. It's a big deal. We all know guys that are old in age, but they're extremely young emotionally and mentally. They're little boys living in a man's body, because unfortunately they were never shown, or no one ever helped chisel them into a man. And it's sad, right? And it's why the world is the way it is today, because we've had men generation after generation, or so-called men generation after generation, run away from their responsibilities for a multitude of reasons. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. So let's jump into each one of the ceremonies. So the first ceremony is the page ceremony. And what is this for? This is preparing our sons for puberty. This is a huge marker and milestone in our sons' lives. And it's fraught with anxiety, fear, the potential to not only hurt themselves but hurt others, and really change the course of their life. And I know it did for me. And maybe had I understood or gotten some of this, I wouldn't have made a lot of the decisions that I made. I wouldn't have compromised the way that I compromised at such a young age. Um, you know, chasing after girls and trying to fill this void that I had in my heart that my dad left me with the love of a woman. And this is fitting for ages 7 to 13. I wouldn't say go any younger than 7, and definitely before the age of 13. But, as that's a marker for, the teenage years and what's coming ahead. So why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to give them the basics of manhood and talk to them about being a teenager and what they might experience or could experience. And what does this look like? So Dr. Robert Lewis recommends what's called the Dobson tapes. I think if you just go on Amazon or Google the Dobson tapes, you can pull it up. But Dr. James Dobson has been a family therapist and I think he might be a psychologist too, but for like forever, right? Like maybe even, I don't even know, easily more than 30 years, might even be 50 now. But he made these tapes that discuss not only puberty, but discuss sexual reproduction and all the stuff that goes along with that. And I don't know about you, but that's not always an easy talk to have with your kids. I never got that talk, and I was 20, no, what would I have been, 18, 17 or 18? I don't know. And I just remember my grandpa telling me to go have that talk with my sister, and him telling me that that was my duty as her older brother since our dad wasn't around. That was not a challenge I accepted, let me tell you that. But I just remember the awkwardness surrounding that when he was talking to me about that. And I remember when I talked to my son about it, how different it was just by taking the initiative in knowing where my heart was and what I wanted my son to know. And you got to use honor, right, when you go through that and you decide to do that, and how much you want to share about maybe your own life with your kids. Honor and discernment, right? Because I think that they need to know, but the way that you share information, it holds weight. And growing up, people would always tell me, don't have sex until you're married, and they would say the Bible says so, but they would never tell me why. They would just tell me that, and that didn't accomplish anything for me, because contend to be a very logical person, and I just want to know the reasons why. Well, I'd go into the real world, get some real world experience for myself, and learn the hard way why that is so clearly suggested, not only in the Bible, but among that generation. So the Dobson tapes. The Dobson tapes will help you be able to explain that in a more comfortable and maybe easy way to your son. And it's help preparing them for adolescence, right? And what you could do is you could play those on the weeks leading up to this page ceremony. The next thing you want to have as part of the ceremony is you want to have a manhood definition. What does manhood mean to you? You really need to take some time to think about that. We talk about it in this. We talk about accepting responsibility. We talk about rejecting passivity. We talk about leading courageously. And we talk about investing eternally, right? And what that looks like. All four of those things look like. And my son, he knows those things. And it's important for whatever your definition of manhood is, for your son to know that. And you want to take him out to dinner, right? A nice dinner. And you want to present that definition of manhood to him. And you want to, I would suggest, make him memorize it, right? So he has that ingrained in him. As he continues to get older, you can build on that, right? It's the foundation. And then you want to give them a symbol of remembrance. And I just want to say one thing, like, this is not set in stone, right? These are frameworks for how you go about doing these. And last week I shared what my son's page ceremony looked like. We didn't do the daps and tapes. I just flat out talked to him about all of those things. Manhood definition, definitely shared what manhood meant. And I incorporated other men that were meaningful in my life and in his to talk about what manhood meant as well. And then a symbol of remembrance. You know, it's a gift that is meaningful but relates to manhood. And I talked about last week how I gave my son and his friend Ethan each a sword, and how God had spoken to me about the characteristics of each of these swords and how they were present in each one of these young boys' lives, and to call those things out of them so that they could start to walk into those things and develop those things in their lives. Very powerful. And then you want to include some sort of ceremonial prayer. You know, we're a family of faith. I'm a person of faith. I follow the teachings personally of Jesus Christ, and prayer is extremely important to me. I believe it's extremely powerful. And what our ceremony looked like is, when we were done, we got all the men around and we laid hands on these boys and we prayed for them. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. And the change in their countenance, the change in the atmosphere, the confidence that they had, I can't tell you how powerful it is. I don't care what age you are. When you have an older man take interest in your life and who you are and who you're becoming, and then pray a blessing over you and call you into something higher, there's nothing more powerful than that in a one-on-one relationship. It's crazy. So, second ceremony is the squire ceremony, and this is what I'm currently preparing for my son. And what is this for? It's preparing them for leaving home. Right? They're going to go out into the world on their own. You know, maybe they go to college, maybe they go off and they get their own job. It looks different, obviously, for each son. But, you know, this is fitting for ages 17 to 19. And why are we doing this? We're doing this to prepare him for what lies ahead the next few years, and to challenge him, right? To challenge him to embrace those things and to get the most out of those things and to not waste those years. You know, it's funny how this last 4 years, because my son's a senior in high school, he couldn't wait to get out of high school and get on with his life. And me telling him, hey man, slow down and just enjoy the journey, enjoy where you're at. And that's like a paradox for people, like even for myself, right? You blink and all of a sudden 5 years have gone by. And you're like, where did that time go? And there may be a little bit of regret for wanting to move so fast, right? And get on to the next thing. You know, and me telling my son, one day, you know, you may wish that you could go back to just being in high school, right? What you think you know of responsibility, you really have no idea, my man. So yeah, so we're preparing him for what lies ahead the next few years and challenging him. So what does this look like? So Dr. Robert Lewis suggests these things. He suggests, one, there's a gathering of dads. You take your son out with the other dads and sons, if they have sons, and you want to do a group celebration, and you do an elaborate dinner. When we lived in Chicago, I got to be a part of this for another gentleman's son, and he got all of us together, along with some other sons, and it was a ceremony specifically for his son. So nothing was done for the other sons, but the reason the other sons were there is because we wanted to, or I should say, he wanted to not only have them be a part of this, but show them, I guess, maybe what was possible, right? So maybe they go back to their dads and they talk about this, and this becomes a life-changing moment for them. And even if their dads didn't do this for them, they now have the seed planted in them. So when they had their own sons, they can think back and take action on that. And we had a very nice and elaborate dinner at a friend's house, cooked by his wife, who was a very excellent chef. They spent a ton of money on the food, let me tell you. It was crazy. And then the next thing he suggests is that you present your son with a family crest, and you give an explanation about that and what the things on the family crest stand for. So I don't know about you. Maybe you need to figure out what your ancestral roots are and what your family crest would look like. Or maybe you're like me and I didn't really look into that and I wanted to start fresh. So I made up my own family crest for our family and the values I want our family to have. And I will present that to my son when he has his squire ceremony. And we will discuss what those things mean in greater detail. And then we're going to talk about the next 4 years of his life and some of the potential pitfalls that are ahead. Leaving the house and having the opportunity to have more time to yourself brings with it some challenges and also some potential for some slippery slopes, right? And as you get older, the opportunity to do more. When you're 21 and all of a sudden you're of legal drinking age. There's several potholes or pitfalls ahead that we would be wise to point those out to our sons and not just turn a blind eye and be like, all right, well, he'll just learn on his own as he goes through it. What kind of dad would we be, right? We want the best for our kids. So I want the best for my son, so I'm going to be open and honest and real with him and share those things. And then you want to end the ceremony with the ceremonial circle of prayers with families. I believe Robert Lewis he took his son out with, I want to say, 3 or 4 other families with their dads to do this, and then they came back home, and then the families got around the boys to pray for them. So the next ceremony is the night ceremony. And what is this for? This is to recognize him for where he's been and where he is now, right? We want to honor the journey that he has been on. And why are we doing this? We're doing this to call him into manhood. And this is where this is done, right? And the ideal age for this, if you go to college, is when they graduate from college. If they don't go to college, I guess the suggestion would be, after they've been out of the house on their own for a couple of years, to get him back together with you, and to do this for him. And you know what? If you're a father and you're watching this and you don't have young sons, maybe you have an older son, maybe he's 30, maybe he's in his 40s. It's never too late to do this. And I can promise you that it'll be extremely powerful. It'll be one of the most powerful things that you ever do for your son. It's never too late for a night ceremony. Never. What does this look like? So, first suggestion is it's once again a gathering of men, right? Dinner with close friends and dads, men only. Why is that? Why men only? Why do I say that? Because only men can bestow manhood on other men, and there are just some things that a man uh, should talk to another man directly about, or that a man should share with another man in the company of only a man. And if you're a mom and you're watching this, or you're a woman and you're watching this and you're like, well, what's up with that? You just gotta trust me, okay? I'm not here to be famous. I'm not here to make money, or I don't know. I have no ulterior motive. I'm here because I care about people. I care about men. And this made a huge difference in my life. It's going to make a huge difference in my son's life. And if it can make a huge difference in your son's life, then so be it. Second part is wise words, right? And Robert Lewis had the men that were a part of this ceremony for his son describe where they had been in their own life, and what that journey looked like, and where they went, and particularly bring it back to the son, and with the dad, talking about where the son has been, and then where they should go, right? What types of things they should be thinking about as they go into that next stage of life. I mean, this is really what it is. It's 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 mentoring, but it's for your son, right? 3, the ring and commissioning into manhood. So Robert Lewis took the family crest, and he had it put on rings with some other saying I don't remember off the top of my head, but he had that made, and he presented that to his son. And on here it says it was given to all the boys. So he had 2 dads, I think 2 or maybe it was 3 dads, that the same dads that were a part of every single ceremony for his son, right? So they went through this together because their sons were all similar age. So on this night, all of the dads presented their boys the ring, and they commission them into manhood. And commissioning can look like a couple of different things, right? You could just give the ring, but how much better would it be to have the ring, or whatever symbol you would choose to use, and to show that to your son, and then make an invitation and invite him to step into manhood. And before you do that, reminding him of your definition of manhood and what those things mean. And as he comes to accept that symbol, he is accepting it knowing that he is committed to those things. This isn't just a fly-by-night type of thing. This is a lifestyle. This is a life decision. And that symbol will be there to always remind him of those things he chose to stand for and adopt into his life. And then 4, the welcome to the round table. So all this stuff that Robert Lewis does, that he discusses in Raising a Modern Day Knight, is based on the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And this part, right, is just the dads welcoming their sons into manhood, and what that looks like. And I just want to give a little advice on this part, because I've seen this play out firsthand, and it can go one of 2 ways. if you're going to go through the elaborate plan of putting this together for your son, and then you're going to do that, you got to remember what you're doing. You're calling your son into manhood. So when this is over, you've said to your son that he's a man. So from that day moving forward, you got to treat him like a man. If you go back to treating him like a little boy, or how you were treating him before that, you are not erasing, you are weakening the power of the ceremony and all the things that you've been speaking to him about all these years. And sometimes that's hard for some dads to do, and I saw it firsthand, right? Where a dad did this for his son, but then he didn't let his son fully walk into or walk out being a man. And I get it. I'm not at that age yet, and so I don't know how difficult that may be. But I'm just saying, as a silent observer, well, not because I let some of this stuff be known, but I'm talking about from observing from a distance. Some of the problems that transpired after this were because the son was trying to be a man, and the dad wasn't letting him be a man. So if you're going to go through this, and when it's done, saying to your son he's a man, alright, what comes with being a man? What decisions come with being a man? What responsibilities come with being a man? You can't be rescuing them. Right? You gotta let them make their own decisions. You gotta respect that boundary. You gotta honor them in that. So just a little distinction that I wanted to, or a little piece of wisdom maybe I wanted to interject. It's probably easier said than done. And then finally we have the oath ceremony. And what is this for? It's a reminder and an encouragement for your son to play the man. And this is probably going to be repeated over many times throughout the rest of his life, right? Because there's some days where it would be easy not to play the man and to just not accept responsibility. Accept passivity, forget courage, just stand in the back, let someone else do it, let someone else say it, alright, not invest eternally, all those types of things. But we're not called to that. Maybe it's fair, maybe it's not, but it is what it is. And why are we doing this? We're doing this to prepare him for marriage and what lies ahead. And if you're married, you know this. Like, marriage ain't a walk in the park. Marriage is freaking hard. It's hard at times. Sometimes because of self-inflicted wounds that we do to ourselves. Case in point. And sometimes just because life likes to throw boulders for us to catch and tries to crush us, right? To test our resilience, I don't know, our patience, all that type of stuff. So we're preparing him for marriage and what lies ahead, because now he's not just going to be responsible for himself, but he's going to have a responsibility to another person. Typically not one person, you know, the little people that come after that as well. And what does this look like? So Robert Morris did this at the rehearsal dinner. He told his son's story in front of everyone about how they became a man and how he walked his son through these things, and the courage and some examples along the way of how his son embrace these things, right? He is showing honor to his son. Something that's been lost, man. It's been lost among brothers. It's been lost among friends. It's been lost between husband and wives. missing so significantly from society now. But here he is honoring his son in doing that. And then he is making a challenge to his son to answer the call of a lifetime of courage, and reminding him of the promises that were outlined in his vision of manhood, or his rules for manhood, or I think that's what rules, it's probably not the right word, but definition, right, that are outlined in his definition of manhood. And then he makes a presentation of the crest. And just like the crest that is on the ring that he gave to his son, he went out and got this like elaborate crest made like super fancy and put in a case and presented it to his son, so that his son would have that to hang somewhere in the house, whether it be in the man cave, whether it be on the wall in the bedroom, for when he was married. And the purpose of that was to remind him of manhood for the rest of his life, and what he was committing himself to, and what he was called to, right? The calling that he has on his life. So that when, he finds himself struggling in his marriage and things are tough, he can look at that and he can remember that he made an oath, he made vows, and is he going to walk those out, or is he going to run from them? There's many times where I've looked at my sword and thought about the oath I took and what that meant, and what it means to fight for our family and fight for our kids and fight for the generations that are coming after us, and how important that is, and how it's not just about us. Like, you got to understand the weight that this carries. And Robert Lewis wanted his son to have something to remind him of the weight that manhood carries. So that is it for tonight. If you're still with me, I really appreciate it. Hope you got a lot out of this. Once again, highly encourage you, if you got young sons, take the time to plan this out, think about this and prepare, and then make it happen. And then if you got older sons and maybe you can't do some of the ceremonies, do the ones that you can. You don't got to do all 4. If you can just do one, the difference that it will make in your son's life, and you have no idea of the ripple effect that that's going to have for generations to come. And one day there may be great grandkids who remember you, because this is a family tradition. This is what men in your family do. They take the time to teach their sons about manhood, about honor, about respect, about courage, and what those things mean and what those things look like. And they're going to remember how that started with you. It's powerful, man. It's powerful. So I love you, brothers. Thanks for watching. If you need me, hit me up. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow for the Saturday shout out. Have a good night.